Good, other than the sweat.
Yeah. There. This joke has really no relevance to the topic today. I tried thinking of one, but just nothing came. Why could the green pepper not do archery?
I don't know.
Because he didn't have an arrow.
You love the pun kind of play on words jokes. That's true. Like you can't really shoot if you don't have an arrow.
Yes. Josh shared that one yesterday. Came in clutch. You know.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, that's tomorrow's.
Good. That's good. You got it.
Let me use that. I wanted to talk to you about and get your thoughts and feelings on the Sound of Freedom. That's really we had some recent experiences kind of talking about it and some feelings coming up, especially for me. I know you felt plenty of things, but I just want to talk about that and maybe what impact seeing that movie has had on you.
Yeah, that's a great topic. It's kind of something that I'd want to support no matter what. So anyone who happens to listen to us, which isn't very many yet, but if you haven't gone to see The Sound of Freedom, the first right off the bat thing is you should go see it. And we'll talk a little bit about maybe why I believe that and maybe what your thoughts are on it too today. But
maybe real quick, we could give context as to what that is.
Yeah.
So it's a film that's based on true stories. I know it's been a little bit dramatized, but about a man who is an agent for Homeland Security, goes out and is doing these operations to try and help against child traffickers, sex trafficking, and eventually kind of gives up his job to go into it a little bit more and save some kids. And he actually does this in real life, with a whole organization. But anyway, the movie is kind of follows his story going into this unknown terrain and the dangers that lie there
into the world of child sex trafficking and child trafficking, and what he's decided to do to try to help change that and stop that. And the film was really, I think, really eye-opening, even in a world like the one we live in, that we live in a parallel world to that world, with dealing with sexual addiction all the time, pornography addiction. It touches that same place that the movie's all about. And I thought that the movie did a really great job of actually trying to opened my eyes. You know, I live in this world, and it opened my eyes to some links that actually are happening in the industry itself to what happens with child trafficking, but also to the prevalence of things, and also bringing it home in a way that only movies can do sometimes, you know. So that's the context of the movie itself. What's interesting right now is that there's so much back and forth about why the movie didn't come out earlier than it should have, because it was made 5 years earlier, and why there's so much pushback from certain organizations, and why there's complete ignoring from other organizations, and then why there's so much support from other places. It's been kind of an interesting thing. And I think that can get so muddled that you can miss at least the reasons why I think it's important to go see the show. Because you can get lost in all the minutiae and all the details of, did this really happen, or is this guy actually really a good guy or not? And the truth is that anyone that wants to talk about child sex trafficking, I think to a person would say, that's legitimately wrong. It's legitimately something we should be taking a look at. And I believe that most people would say that they're really uneducated about it and don't even understand how significant of a problem it is. And so for that reason alone, it's worth going to see the movie, not to mention some of the other reasons that I have for myself. So maybe I'll just share a little bit of my experience with it, and then I'd love to hear yours too.
Great, yeah.
So I decided to go to the movie. I wanted to go on July 4th, right when it came out, to support the whole cause, but logistically it didn't work out. parts of my family didn't want to go see it because it's like they didn't want to ruin July 4th, basically, because of the heaviness of the content. So I waited for a week. I'm home alone for the weekend with just my second oldest daughter, Lexi, and she's like, Dad, I want to watch maybe a Beautiful Mind tonight. And I'm like, why? She's like, because I'm interested in mental health. And I said, okay, well, we can watch A Beautiful Mind, or we could go to the theater to watch Sound of Freedom. What do you want to do? And I said, we can actually do both if you want. And she's like, oh, I can only do one, Dad. Like, I can't. I don't think I can do both. So we go to the Sound of Freedom, and it's a different experience to go to a movie like that with your daughter.
Yeah.
There was just one flavor of it, that I was going there and I'm sitting there next to my beautiful, amazing, smart, privileged daughter and going, man, like, how grateful am I on one hand that she's never going to experience anything like this movie that we're going to watch, and how almost guilty I felt that we had it so good. But both of those kinds of mixed emotions. That's the first kind of vein that I was thinking and feeling. And then the story starts with the movie, and it hit me. There's a piece that hit me, being a man who's in recovery, who's not wanting to look at pornography anymore, who's in recovery from pornography. As I'm watching the movie, it pierced me deeply that I don't know. Like, I don't think, I prefer to believe not. But the likelihood that anyone who's looking at pornography is actually complicit in the child sex trafficking trade, or in the sex trafficking trade in general, is really likely. And so I felt this deep sense of guilt and shame over the fact that there's a possibility that I've been complicit in this before. And there's one particular character in the movie that used to be on the bad side that's now on the good side, that I actually really resonated with and thought, okay, like, here's kind of a call to action for me to be on the good side. So I felt that. Then I felt some heaviness of the scope of the problem and where to start. Like, how do you even tackle the problem? And then questions as to, how do we live in a world where there's so much pain that there's a market for this, like, so then my brain's going all that direction. And then finally, I think the thing that I left most with was passion, hope, and conviction, and feeling a sense of, like, I think I felt called up to continue to do the work that we're doing. I felt called up to continue to find ways to speak out, not just on this thing, but on the other things in our world that are important. And I left with kind of this weird mix of emotions, but as it's all settled, it's really kind of formulated into just a deeper sense of conviction. So that was my experience with it.
Yeah. I've had kind of similar feelings. The last little bit for me, maybe the last couple of years really have been in a wrestle with God about what to do about religion and spirituality, and how I connect to Him. And I've had a sequence of a few things. Usually, thanks for me always come in threes. Like, it's like the same message, but 3 times. Like, it's how it feels. But with this one, it was kind of a pinnacle experience, and opening me up first, and then the other 2 experiences coming thereafter to try and solidify, like, hey man, I'm trying to reach you.
Yeah.
So in my relationship with God, it was interesting to watch this figure. His name's Tim Ballard. He's played by another actor, but it follows him as the agent trying to figure out how to do the good, like trying to save these kids. And I never had a singular moment where I was like, I am Tim Ballard, like, get in his shoes and follow exactly, like, go out and try and save kids in the same exact way. Where previously, when I first heard about the organization, I was like, I need to do what he does. I need to figure out how to become like him. Instead, what it did was, I'm just gonna be feeling all sorts of stuff, dude.
That's good, man.
I felt like a call to repentance, in a sense of, I am not listening enough to God's guidance. And if I was, I could be a figure like what this guy was doing. I could help save souls, like actually, and help people kind of get through their pain or process whatever trauma they've gone through. And I know that's a lot of what you are already doing. And you know, in many ways, we're working in a partnership in tandem, and I've been trying to learn alongside you. And it's been really a huge blessing for me to have you as an example. Not to put you on a pedestal, you know. So much as
do that.
Right, yeah. Your head's already big enough, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, the thing that was compelling to me about this man in this movie is hearing the interviews afterwards and learning more about his faith, his conviction, his connection and passion for his relationship with God. Like, that almost stands out so much so that they really downplayed it in the movie to make it more accessible and relatable, you know, across the secular society, right? But at the same time, you go learn about this guy, and one of the things that he was told was by his director, "You're the man for the job because of your faith. This job is going to crush your soul. Like, you're going to see some stuff it's going to break your heart repeatedly. And the only way that you're going to be able to sustain a life through all of that is by having this relationship with God that you have." Yeah. And I've kind of felt like, I know I'm not there. I don't have that level of strength. And I think maybe even specifically that word strength. And I don't mean that it just bubbles up from within me and I'm just like this strong figure, so much as knowing that I can rely and have that relationship with God that's just foundational. It feels kind of tenuous right now and fluid, and so I'm trying to correct that. And that's what this movie did for me. It was, you know, I've seen things that are kind of similar, not exactly the same, and had thoughts that are kind of along those lines of, man, sex trafficking is horrible. The child rape is horrible. Like, there's all of these things, and feel that the weight of it just pressing down on me. But then the feeling afterwards wasn't, and step up. Yeah. Like, this time it was like, hey, they need you.
Yeah.
You know, and the way that I can help them is by being the best possible man that I can become.
Yeah. Well, I think that's I hear you, Chase. I love everything you just said, man. And like I told you the other day, but I love your heart because you do feel deeply, and I know you're wrestling with your own faith. I think we all do. I would guess that if in a quiet moment you were to ask even a guy like the hero of the movie, there have been moments where his faith has probably faltered, and he's probably felt burned out and probably wondered where God was at.
Yeah.
I can only imagine
No
that's true, because that's human. Like, every human being feels that way sometimes. So, you know, but with that said, you know, I can appreciate that you're feeling that sense of it's not even like a guilt trip. It's more of a call up.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. It's a call up to action. And I love that you had that openness kind of open up inside of you, where you kind of almost felt God reaching into you. And he may not be saying, go be Tim Ballard.
Right. Yeah.
He's going to tell you to do something else. Maybe
he's telling me to be Chase Jones.
He's telling you to actually accept the truth of who you are. And as part of the truth of who you are, you're going to be a force for good in the world somehow. Because that's the nature of a life that's worth living anyway, is that I live with some kind of purpose, some kind of calling, some kind of passion based off of the recipe that God created me to be. And you're not going to be me. I'm not going to be you, right? Like, I happen to feel fortunate that, like, right now in my own roller coaster of faith, I feel pretty solid in the calling that I have for the career that I have.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like God has forged and is forging me to be and do exactly what I do for a living. I don't think everybody gets that. Like, it gets that lucky. And I'm still learning and growing, and it might change, and God might call me in a different direction. But the wrestle to do that, and then the ability to follow through on those things, those feelings, those promptings, I think that's the important part. And and I see you trying to do that, and I think that that's something that the film did for me too. Is it sort of like reignited that sort of call up, and that's what I think is maybe one of the biggest messages of today, at least for me and for any of you guys listening, is, what is God calling you up to do? Not shaming you, not guilting you, but think about your life experiences. Think about your personality. Think about your strengths and your characteristics. All of those things are coming together for a purpose that's bigger than you, bigger than me, bigger than you. But the way that it gets accomplished is by us striving on an individual level to be the very best version of ourselves that we can be. And that's something that I think, like, really hit me, is that matters. Like, yeah, I need to stop looking at porn. Like, you need to stop looking at porn because that's not helping you be your best self. But as you become your best self, you stop doing things like looking at porn, and there's a direct ripple effect into the lives of the people that you're directly connected to, right? So it really does matter, that you take accountability for your own life and being your best, and that I take accountability for my own life and being my best. And when we both do that together, we become something bigger than we could be on our own, but we also have an influence on each other that is deeper and more impactful than playing small. So I love what you said there.
I appreciate that, and all of those thoughts. I mean, one thing that I have been feeling in addition to, hey, get your own stuff figured out, is because the people around you need it as well. It's like what you were saying, that just that ripple effect when you're living in harmony with God's will for your life. Wonderful things happen for you, yes, but then also for everything else that you touch and connect with. And I look at my relationship with Chels, my wife, and with our 2 kids, and I want it to be as good as it could possibly ever be. Like, why would I want them to suffer needlessly because of me not living up to my own birthright, essentially?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So that's, yeah.
And I think doing it that way, being your best self, because you have interaction with other people, it influences their life, and it provides structure and support for those people, who then have other connection with other people. And eventually, even if you're not on the front line of going in on a child trafficking sting, somebody is.
Right.
And somebody needs to be that person. Somebody needs to be the Tim Ballard who has to sit and watch child porn and then type it up for the court reports. Like, how crushing would that be to your soul? But if he doesn't have a wife who's living her best self, living her best life, staying connected to God, and if she doesn't have a support team, nobody can step out on the edge of that pinnacle and survive it long term, right? And so it really does take a bunch of individuals being their best that grow in support of one another that actually makes it viable to step into some of these places where there's the darkest, hardest, most evil things that you could be dealing with. And so there is reason, even if you're not on the front line, to look yourself in the mirror and go to work on being your best self. Man, we live in a beautiful place, Chase. I don't know if people can see this through the camera or feel it. I know they can't feel the air right now. Sunrise just came up right behind the camera. the entire valley is full of green and sheer beauty, clouds in the sky. And I mean, we're sitting here talking about the sound of freedom, and we're kind of standing here living one version of it right now. And it's absolutely beautiful. And I hope that if you're watching, you're actually able to at least soak in a little bit of it. Just the vastness and the beauty of God's creations.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.